and I started drinking, and I started smoking weed, and I started cutting myself because I hated who I was. And I remember talking to the kids in my class and not wanting to be made fun of because I was embarrassed.
That made it very difficult for me to go to school. That made it very difficult for me to make friends.
I got bullied a lot in elementary school. And there were probably about 10 girls in my class. And throughout elementary school, they slowly stopped talking to me because I hung out with the boys and I played kickball. They decided that because I was friends with the boys, I could not be friends with them. And one day in 5th grade, I remember sitting on the playground and I watched all 10 of those girls walk inside of that school and tell the guidance counselor that they all hated me because I was friends with the boys and that I must be a slut.
And I had never kissed a boy, I had never held hands with a boy, nothing like that. It's just, that's the word that was used. And that's what kind of started that for me, moving on to middle school. My 7th grade year, I got bullied online by these 2 girls. I remember sitting in my room one day and getting a call from a friend saying, "Hey, did you see what those girls posted about you online?" And I just remember opening up my laptop. I just looked at the things that they wrote, and I just remember crying and asking my mom, take it down, tell them to take it down, but you can't. Once something's on the internet, it doesn't go away.
I had my first sexual assault in 8th grade. I was on a school bus trip to a ski lodge, and I was asleep in the back seat, and I woke up to one of the boys in my class on top of me.
And at that point in my life, I didn't know whether that was something that was normal or not. And when I talked to my friends about it, they basically just said, I bet he didn't mean to do it. You should just move on from it. And they kind of didn't really believe me that it was something that I didn't understand or didn't like. I ended up going into freshman year, and I would walk down the hallways and boys would push me into the locker and grab my butt. And then if I didn't reciprocate or give back to them, they would call me a slut or a whore or a bitch. And it was really hurt. I hurt from it. And I didn't know if this was something that was normal. And that's what I kept telling myself. This just must be normal. This must be what happens to all girls.
But that next summer, going into my freshman year, I was pushed into a closet, and I was forced into a 7 minutes in heaven, although I was banging on the door and screaming to be let out.
I remember just being so down on myself and so upset with myself that it must have been my fault that they did it, that it was my fault, something I did that made them want to do that. And I started to self-harm because I was so upset with myself for allowing that to happen.
And then my sophomore year, I went to hang out with a boy who I thought was my friend. And I was raped that night. And at that point, I decided that if guys don't respect my body, why should I?
I started hanging out with a different crowd. I was drinking, and I was smoking, and I was partying. I was lying to my parents. I was sneaking out. It was tough. And at that point, I hated who I was. I absolutely hated myself. And I figured that there was really no reason for me to live anymore. So that summer, I ended up overdosing.
And I texted 3 of my best friends at school, and 2 of them responded, "Oh, it's okay, take a bath, you'll be just fine." And the other one believed me. And she came to my house, she left her brother's birthday dinner. She found me sitting on the floor in my room. I had just been cutting, and I was going in and out of consciousness. And I remember her kneeling down with me and grabbing my hands and my arms and just screaming, "Katrina, please come back. Katrina, don't leave, don't leave."
There were people at home waiting for me, my family, my friends, my dog, that all loved me and cared about me, and that if I left, what would that mean for them? And that kind of struck me, and I think that's what kind of helped me to be determined to get out of the hospital, to leave there and to go back home.
From there, leading into this, I met a woman who, after talking to me for a while, not knowing anything that I had been through, told me that she believed I could be Miss America one day. And I laughed at her. I didn't know what pageants were. I didn't know how to deal with my curly hair. I didn't know how to put on makeup, really, other than black eyeliner that I wore every day in middle school, or even how to wear dresses or heels. But she kept talking me into it and reminded me that it was a scholarship pageant and that you could pick a platform. And that word stuck out to me and it hit me. And I was like, what's a platform and what can I do with that? And she's like, it's something that you're passionate about, that you can travel your state and talk about. And I knew I want to talk about teen suicide prevention awareness because I don't want anyone else to feel the way that I have. And what I feel is that my second chance is to speak about my story and to share it with others who are going through something similar or the same thing, so that they know that they are not alone and that there is hope. And I came up with my organization, which is Teens of Tomorrow, Teen Suicide Prevention Awareness, where I remind teens that they're irreplaceable and that if they leave this earth, there is no one else who can fill their spot.